in your assessment, is there a failure on the part of the federal government to do that?
There is what I call, whether it's a failure or really an inadequacy. Okay? If it's a failure, then you are attributing intentionality. And it's difficult to say. Although, people will begin to wonder, is there a sincerity of purpose in the way that the government is handling the situation? Not just at the federal level, at the state level, and even at the local government level. Is there any sincerity of purpose? We need to grapple with that.
Reverend Father, we've heard from a few governors who are part of the National Economic Council and the subcommittee, the technical committee on the farmer-herdsman crisis. They have looked at a series of factors that they believe are responsible for the current tragedies we're seeing unfolding in the Middle Belt. And one of the things that they cited was that with those who are moving the cattle, these herdsmen, many of them are not owners of the cattle. That you have a series of big men who essentially own the cattle and give them to the herders. Then the herders now go out looking for what they need for their cattle. And then you find that those herdsmen don't have any cattle for themselves to essentially pass down to their children, for example. And so now you're encouraging cattle rustling, theft, and banditry. Can you talk a little bit about some of these kind of foundational factors that you think may be at play here?
Yes. The issue about grazing in Nigeria today, first of all, I wish to acknowledge that we are centuries behind time. In very civilized and developed countries, it is no longer about open grazing. It's being able to open a ranch, get sufficient feed for your cows, and to even help those who are pasturing your cows not to walk long distances and to encounter even the cattle rustling that has been the bane of contention today. So I think that we need to look a step forward and see what we can do. Because the Benue Valley, as we have it today, which is thought to be very fertile, and I think it spreads from Kogi up to Taraba State, and it is claimed that it is very fertile. And it is also been thought that that was a grazing route that was created so many years ago. But imagine that with the population today and with settlements springing up everywhere today, definitely that grazing route must have been tampered with. So what we expect, that since there are men who are wealthy enough to possess all the cows and are employing these ordinary people to look after the cows, why don't they, sincerely, we are appealing to look for a better way of grazing these days, to save the cattle from being rustled and the lives of the herders from being threatened, and then we'll have a fertile land, we'll have good produce. So I'm telling you, the way things are unfolding now, we may have food crisis in the country this year.
That's actually something that the President Buhari pointed to in his comments. I think what they were referring to, even at the NEC meeting, was the need for ranches, that they have now kind of shifted their position, I think, on the basis of available intelligence. That, you know, before, we heard from the defense minister, we heard from even the president saying, look, Nigerians have to live together, we have to find a way, we have to do this and that. Now you're hearing a bit of a different perspective based on the intelligence that, look, there needs to be some level of, we need to establish ranches and stop the movement. Do you think that that is the way to go, though, the building of ranches around the country? And do you think state governments should buy into that?
Some state governments are bought into it. Kano, in particular, is willing to give up land. I think Kogi also has given
But not all, though. We know, for example, in Benue, there are still some issues around whether or not the land will be given to...
Yeah, the Benue issue is one that has lived for so long with us. The Fulanis have lived side by side, I think, in the Benue Valley, close to Agatu, and there has never been crisis. The cattle were seen normally, and they never strayed into the farms. So we are thinking that this is a new development, and it's coming at a very larger scale that everyone is beginning to be afraid to see. So largely, I will support the position of the government that we try to develop ranches, and we try also to encourage those who are well-to-do to think better. The cows in UK, in Europe, everywhere, are looking fatter than the cows we have in Nigeria because they have to walk this long distance, sometimes to areas where there's no water, and even the grasses get dried so often, being burnt by farmers in order to till the soil for cultivation. So if the government is going to venture into that, I think it will bring a lot of stability and peace to this country.
Professor Omaji, one of the conclusions reached at the NEC meeting yesterday was that they are now planning on extending the anchor borrower scheme, loans and grants, to herdsmen, yes. So that they'll be able to purchase their own cattle over a period of time, so that there's some ownership in the process.
That's right.
If they're able to succeed in doing that, and they're able to establish these ranches where they said, according to the governors, that there will be medical facilities and schools, even for the children of the herdsmen in these ranches. Is that the solution here? Is it as simple as that?
Well, it's part of the solution. It's not all the solution. Why do I say that? I say that because we have had narratives before that tell us that some of the perpetrators of the violence are themselves not herdsmen, but that herdsmen, mobilize them for the defense of their cattle. And some of them, we're told, have no connection whatsoever with the herdsmen. They just use the cover of the herdsmen to perpetrate the attacks, and then they disappear. So while ranching, I believe, will be very helpful. I mean, look, since 1942, there have been ideas that pastoralists should settle and look after their cattle. Since 1942 in Nigeria. The whole idea behind the 1965 grazing reserve law that the Northern Regional Government passed was also to gradually begin to get the pastoralists to settle. But nobody has followed on this. Nobody has actually actualized the policy intentions. Now we are in a situation where this thing has escalated. And we get to know that it is because they are fighting over shortage of land. Let me put this to the viewers. We understand that in Nigeria we have at least not less than 98 million hectares of land. That's the land mass. And out of these, we have not less than 82 million hectares that is arable land. So far, only about 32 or 34 million is under cultivation. So we have at least 60% of the arable land that is not under cultivation. So the question I am processing as a criminologist is that what is the reason for the clash?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think one of the very interesting elements of what happened yesterday was you had Vice President Yemi Osinbajo attend the ECOWAS meeting concerning the farmers herdsmen clashes. And one of the conclusions was that, look, this free movement agreement that allows people to move freely across ECOWAS states, essentially in some cases without documentation, is something that is providing fuel for Islamists and militants to come into the country and kill our people.
Yes.
If the NEC is able to succeed in developing a solution by which we're able to stop these people at the borders who do not have ECOWAS documentation for the first time, could that be a part of the more comprehensive strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about illegal immigrants coming in, causing havoc, and then disappearing into the thin air. And people have said because of the ECOWAS transhumance, policy that allows people to come in and... But we already know that actually most of the herdsmen that come from outside Nigeria, they do not come from the ECOWAS country, fundamentally. They come from the other part, the eastern part, which consists of Central African Republic, Chad, and things like that. And the borders are so porous. The question is, we already know long ago that the Nigerian borders provide a lot of challenge for security in the land. What have we done about it? When we get funds for security, what do we deploy the funds for? Are they strategic? I mean, I understand about 490-something billion, million US dollars has now been released for the purchase of this, Toscano jet. Well, my question, what is going on in my mind is how much of the money would actually go to technological aids that will help us monitor and protect our unprotected borders? It doesn't take rocket science.